Hi guys, Forgotten Wolf here, and this is the 100 subscriber special, a 1 hour video on the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. Before I begin, thanks so much for 100 subscribers. I really cannot thank you guys enough for getting to 100 subs. Grab some food, a drink, or whatever else you want, and let's begin. I can't believe I'm making a 1 hour video. For those who don't know, Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror game franchise created by Scott Cawthon and currently made by Stillwell Studios with help from Scott. Now, I must emphasize that I'm only going over not the main games, but the Afton saga, as Matt Beck called it, from FNAF 1 to UCN. I'll also be incorporating Secret of the Mimic, since that's the game that's currently the earliest in the timeline. Now, I am sorry this took way too long. No movies, no FNAF world, and I won't be using any books outside the survival logbook. I will start off in the 50s with when we meet a man named William Afton, or William Appleton. Now, Afton is a child at this point. He saw a singing bear show that he loved very much, and it gave him a lot of joy, so he decided to make it his life goal to entertain children through mascots. Moving away from Afton for a second, Murray's Costume Manor's owner, Murray Sr., would die in 1967, a couple years later. Moving back to Afton now, over the years he would found the company Fazbear Entertainment, and sometime in the 60s with a carnival where he had costumes for his characters, just Freddy and Bonnie. To make the costumes, Afton had Murray's Costume Manor make them more costumes along with Foxy and Chica, Murray's Costume Manor was now ran by Edwin Murray. Murray's father did not trust Fazbear Entertainment, run at this point by William Afton. Speaking of William, Afton did have some competition, being Henry Emily. Henry ran a rival business called Chica's Party World, where the animatronics there included Chica. Chica's Party World would eventually fall under the Fazbear Entertainment umbrella, along with Fredbear's Family Diner, opened later. And Afton and Henry began working together in the 70s. As a side note, Fredbear's Family Diner was opened in 1979 with two animatronics, Fredbear and Golden Bonnie. The Fazbear Entertainment umbrella included Fall Fest, Chica's Party World, and Fredbear's Family Diner. I'm going to take a break from William Afton and Henry Emily and focus on the Murray family. I briefly mentioned them, but now I think for this part of the timeline we focus solely on them now. Edwin Murray got married to Fiona in 1967/1968, and on December 6th, 1969, David Murray was born. Now, Edwin became more and more busy after the birth of his son, resulting in one or two more of his son's birthdays missed. Fiona had become a key part of the company by this point, as she helped run Edwin with the company, and she was there helping keep the peace until 1972. Fiona attended Fall Fest with the rest of the crew, working on Fall Fest 1972. However, at Fall Fest 1972, sometime between September to December 1972, a fire would break out, and this destroyed everything and killed Fiona. We first heard of this back in the two Help 1 games, and there's been various hints at a fire that broke out there in Help 1 to 2. And in the Phaser Blast minigame, which takes place in Fall Fest, you shoot rockets at balloons until the animatronics appear and a fire appears, burning it until it's nothing but ash. I know this is meant to be the 1983 version, but if you want more relevant evidence, in Secret of the Mimic, in the computer machine, when you can run moon.exe, which is a game within a game, that sounds funny, if you take a wrong turn, you see a wedding statue thingy. The one statue is on the right has a bow tie, which is something Edwin frequently wears, meaning this is Edwin and Fiona's wedding. However, the woman statue is described as being blackened and burned, which spells fire, and a stand next to it was also burned. Additionally, we know Fiona was there at Fazbear Entertainment's Fall Fest in 1972 because we heard Fiona saying that she feels something bad will happen, and she needs to be at Fall Fest in 1972 with the crew, meaning she was there when everything burnt, and she died. Fiona's death devastated Edwin, and he was never quite the same after that. He became kind of a wreck, but on David's birthday, he broke the news that Fiona/his mother wouldn't be coming back. Edwin was a huge inventor, and he had made an invention which he called the Mimic, or M1 for short. It was finished in 1973, however, M1 was acting weird. it began mimicking Fiona, and took on the role as David's primary caretaker. Edwin also began hearing M1 mimicking Fiona, and he began treating M1 as Fiona, and M1 became everything that Fiona was. For the next couple of years, M1 and David would live peacefully. However, Murray's costume manor would start to suffer and go downhill financially, and Edwin began to hate Fazbear Entertainment. However, on December 6th, again, on 1975, Edwin tasked M1 with collecting David for his 6th birthday, as Game Theory provided with various achievements, suggesting that Edwin missed one of his son's birthdays. I will say, Game Theory helped me a ton with this. I could not have written this timeline without watching Game Theory. When M1 found David, he was dead. Edwin was distraught with his son's death and his company heading towards failure. M1 had a solution towards his problems: build another mimic to mimic David for the family to be reunited again. Edwin failed to create M2 for a while until he finally copied the M1 code and placed the new code into M1 while moving the original M1 code into a computer, and it created M2 with a mimic. The mimic began to mimic David, and Edwin finally snaps, showing it violence and beating it up. David and Edwin would separate. I don't know why I said David. It's the mimic. Well, yeah. Edwin locked himself away after this, working on his final project, only for M2 to strike back and kill him, burning down the house. When I say kill, Edwin isn't confirmed dead. He's just missing, and it's heavily implied that he's old man consequences now, but for all sakes, I am treating him as though he is dead. No one has also heard from Edwin since 1979. This included Fazbear Entertainment, who were sick of not hearing back from Edwin. They finally snapped again, a lot of people snapping already, and a technician called Arnold to go collect blueprints for an animatronic. This begins Secret of the Mimic, finally, almost 7 minutes into the video. Arnold works his way through the facility in Secret of the Mimic, and he hands a device over called the data driver to the Mimic. Arnold was called by dispatch, and when Arnold finally leaves with the computer called Fiona, now Mexes, dispatch reveals it wasn't them who called them in, it was the Mimic. Arnold speeds down the road, not before the Mimic appears and kills him. Afterwards, we don't have the evidence to know what happens next, but we do know the ending. After MCM closed finally, Fazbear Entertainment got the Fiona machine, which housed the M1 program. This program and machine would later be turned into Mexes by William Afton. Somehow Afton also got a hold of the Mimic, and eventually he cements the Mimic under Murray's costume manor and makes Mexes responsible for keeping the Mimic locked down there. And he does build his family house and eventually a secret bunker above Murray's costume manor. And from now on, the Murray name would be hidden from existence by Fazbear Entertainment and forgotten about. The Mimic wouldn't see the light of day for a long time, as now Mexes, as Afton called it, was designed to keep the Mimic locked away deep underground. I swear, if Secret Mimic gets DLC by the time this comes out, I'm gonna lose my damn mind. Moving into 1979, or just the late 70s in general, several Secret of the Mimic employees would steal blueprints from various animatronics. We're taking a step back here. The primary person was Stan, and he would make the company Stan's Budget Tech. This company would go on to build the designs for the mediocre Melodies, Orville Elephant, Ned Bear, Happy Frog, and Pig Patch. We know that these designs weren't Henry's because, for one thing, we see the designs for the mediocre Melodies in Secret of the Mimic, and email says, "Me and Stan are out of here. We have the copyrights to the designs." This connects Stan to Stan's Budget Tech, which we buy the animatronics from in FNAF 6. Before I continue, I must mention Remnant, because this will be very important later on. In the Five Nights at Freddy's series, Remnant is the concept that the souls of the dead will attach to metal, possessing them through sadness and agony of the tragedy of their deaths. I know this isn't a perfect explanation for Remnant, but basically all you need to know here is that dead kids and adults can possess the machines of the bodies they died in, and that will be very important in the coming years. You do need to remember this concept. Yeah. Now back to the FNAF timeline, and once again, I need to pause here to explain the relevant characters for the next few years. William Afton is the co-runner of Fazbear Entertainment, and he runs Fredbear's Family Diner and Fall Fest. Afton is married to a woman who we don't know the name of, so we'll call her Mrs. Afton. They have 3 kids: a son named Michael, a daughter named Elizabeth, and a son who's very heavy speculated to be named David Afton, but he's the crying child either way. William's business partner is Henry Emily, and he's married to someone before they died, and Henry has a daughter named Charlotte Emily. Henry is the primary builder of the animatronics since Edwin's demise, and he built the Wizards, the classics, and the toys, the puppet, and eventually Lefty. Henry also helps William run Fazbear Entertainment, and yeah, like I said, he has 1 kid, Charlotte Emily, or Charlie for short. Around this time in 1979, there were a lot of business plans being prepared. Fazbear Entertainment had been preparing to launch their restaurant Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, featuring Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Why the hell is Freddy spelled wrong in this script? Henry and Fazbear had tasked Edwin with making the spring-lock suit, and Edwin became more and more upset at Fazbear as he kept working, partly because of William Afton's scheme. He had been running for a few years now. Basically, because of the poor relationship between MCM and Fazbear, Afton had planned to get all the equipment from MCM, especially since Afton had acquired the rights to the lands to the Murray's house, and making Edwin's all more unstable. This worked, and it led to the secret mimic mentioned earlier. The aftermath of this was William Afton bulldozing MCM and the Murray house, instead turning it into his family's own house and making good use of the underground bunker MCM had. Now I'm going to explain the relationship between these two. You see, after Edwin's death or disappearance, by the way, I'm clarifying Henry and William. Henry began to gain more and more praise for his work, and this began to make Afton jealous, especially since Afton had bought Henry out. The praise began to grow even more after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched in 1983, 4 years after being planned, with Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Henry also had one more animatronic there, which he built, being the security puppet designed to keep the kids safe, and for the most part, it did its job. Hooray! However, life wasn't perfect for the Freddys, as in 1983, 2 animatronic failures with the spring locks happened simultaneously, killing the employees in Freddy and Bonnie, giving us exposure to Remnant, as the 2 employees killed would become Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie, the first possessed animatronics. This led to Henry making the classic animatronics, although fully repaired. This is in their initial state. Maybe I'll show a picture on screen. Probably I will. All the spring locks suits designed by Edwin were retired, with the exception of Golden Bonnie and Fredbear, as they were still needed at Fredbear's Family Diner. One thing I didn't mention is that about Mr. Afton over here is that he has a flip-flopped mind over Henry Emily. Some days he'll hate him, and some days he'll not. According to the novel Silver Eyes, William frequently changed his mind of Henry, going on from worshipping him to respecting him as his partner and part of his family. However, he'd grow jealous, and then the cycle repeats. Jealousy is a huge mistake and would be the downfall of many, and this would begin William Afton's descent. One night, Afton began to grow more and more upset at Henry's fame, so he traveled to Fredbear's Family Diner or Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. It could be either, but either way, William Afton traveled to the restaurant where he saw Charlie locked out. This gave Afton the idea of revenge and freedom. Afton saw the puppet stuck in its box, and as he struck, he killed Charlie. His first murder. It only took me 14 minutes to get to the first murder. Oh my god. This is gonna be such a long video. The puppet finally broke out of the box and got outside, beginning to malfunction as rain seeped into the suit, and it collapsed on top of Charlie's dead body, and that was the moment that Charlie possessed the puppet. William Afton drove home and found Michael watching TV and discovered that his son, Dave, was gone. Michael tried to encourage William to leave him alone, but William didn't. Dave Afton would be led by the spirit of Shadow Freddy / Bonnie to discover Charlie and the puppet. This is where Midnight Motors takes place, of course. I just described it. Later the night of Charlie's murder. This would leave a scar on the boy for life, as he would become helplessly scared of the animatronics for the rest of his life. In the aftermath of this, Henry had suspicions that William Afton had killed Charlie, but he couldn't prove anything. Meanwhile, the puppet gained tear marks, and Afton saw this. He began to do some experimenting to find out why the puppet had marks there after Charlie's death. So in his house, he ran experiments on David Afton to keep him away from the animatronics, as William knew full well what they could do. William Afton would also become more and more busy, like Edwin, so he hid a camera and mic in David Afton's favorite toy, plush Fredbear, so William could keep an eye on him anywhere and make sure he didn't go near the animatronics. However, William would make one mistake, leaving caretaking duties to his eldest son, Michael Afton. This is where the FNAF 4 minigames take place, and in 1983, by the way, Michael began to resent this crying child for being such an embarrassment to him and repeatedly being scared of the animatronics. So Michael played a prank on David. Together, Michael wearing the Foxy mask, Cassie, who you'll meet later, wearing the Bonnie mask, Cassie's dad, Oswald's dad from the One Book remake, wearing Freddy mask, and Chica Bro. They put the child of David Afton, well, not the child, but David Afton, into the mouth of Fredbear. David was so scared he was squirming around, desperately trying to squeeze out. However, he activated the sensitive spring locks inside Fredbear, and this caused him to shut. The mouth slammed closed, biting David Afton, and this crushing blow to the head would kill him. And he would go on to possess Golden Freddy / Fredbear thanks to the puppet. The bite of 83 would close Fredbear's Family Diner. There were several changes in Fredbear's Family Diner in the years 1983 to early 1985. The first change that the last two Springlock suits, Golden Freddy and Golden Bonnie, would be retired to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The second change, as with Fredbear's Family Diner closing now, Fredbear would become known as Golden Freddy, and Fazbear tried to disassociate with the name Fredbear. Moving on to William Afton, it's highly likely that he noticed the tears of the puppet following Charlie's death, and like I mentioned earlier, and after David's death, he needed a new subject for his experiments. Unfortunately for Michael, him killing David would give William the perfect excuse to torture Michael with his experiments, the same as he did with the crying child / David Afton, which were the FNAF 4 nightmares. And as you can't tell, I'm suggesting, although not currently in the timeline, but Michael Afton is the protagonist of the FNAF 4 nights. Now moving on to 1984 / 1985, William Afton and Mrs. Afton would become divorced following Afton locking himself in his work and in his bunker following David's death. From the Vanessa tapes, we know that the case of the children went to court, and William forced his daughter Elizabeth to lie about her mom, making it look bad, and the court sided in Afton's favor, giving him custody of the kids. After the trial, it's very heavily implied from the tapes that Mrs. Afton took her own life and will go on to possess Ballora later in the timeline. William Afton would start his company for bigger projects, riskier projects than Freddy's, to test out what caused the tears on the puppet. This company would be Afton Robotics, and then William Afton would use Afton Robotics to make the Funtime animatronics: Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora possessed by Mrs. Afton. I would like to explain this placement with one simple statement. There is zero chance the Funtimes are built after 1985, since William gets arrested for the MCI and removed from Fazbear. So him working with Fazbear to create Circus Baby's Pizza World means it has to be before 1985. Back to the timeline. Fazbear approved the Funtimes to work at a company called Afton would run without Henry, Circus Baby's Pizza World, and later a rental location for Circus Babies. William would only made Circus Babies to kidnap kids and experiment them to see what could happen and what couldn't happen. William had two special built animatronics, Circus Baby for his daughter and Ballora to honor his wife, which is heavily implied to be possessed by his wife. William also began to use the old MCM land to make a secret bunker underneath his house. More on that later. Elizabeth, meanwhile, would grow frustrated with her dad, having never let her play with Circus Baby, and finally she disobeyed on the opening day of Circus Baby's Pizza World. She got with Circus Baby alone, and the claws inside Circus Baby opened and took Elizabeth in, and she would be inside Circus Baby, and Elizabeth would be inside possessed Circus Baby. William Afton would be distraught by this, and he now just had Michael left, who was still being tortured, by the way. When he looked at Baby, her eyes transformed from blue to green, the same eyes that Elizabeth had. William knew what this meant, and he had some work to do. Before his work, Afton closed Circus Baby's Pizza and would disguise it as gas leaks, and Afton opened Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals using the same bunker under his house as a testing ground for the animatronics. Not on Michael. William was going to make some changes. William still wanted to see what Remnant can do. He still needed more kids to kill, which sounds like an incredibly wrong thing to say, but William Afton needed to see what would happen with the Remnant. However, after the death of Elizabeth, Afton needed to make more changes. First off, he would do the killing himself instead of letting the machines do it for him, since every time he did that, one of his loved ones would die. With this plan in mind, Afton set off to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. However, before I continue, I should mention the Mangle. Mangle is Toy Foxy in the FNAF 2 restaurant, but it seems the Susie who possesses Chica, her dog goes on to possess Mangle. But that needs to happen in 1985 but Mangle doesn't exist yet, so it's a paradox that I can't solve. So if you have a theory of who Mangle is, then let me know in the comments. So I'm going to say William Afton had 2 Funtime Foxies, and one becoming the Mangle, and the other one obviously Funtime Foxy. William Afton kills Susie's dog and found out the secret to Remnant. With this discovery, William went to Freddy, specifically the FNAF 1 location in 1985. William got in his old spring Bonnie suit and went luring kids. William started with a girl named Susie, to follow him to the back, saying he had this dog in his possession. Susie followed him, and William killed her and stuffed her body into Chica. After that, William Afton used the spring Bonnie suit to lure Fritz to the back and killed him, putting his body in Foxy. Afton used the same animatronics, used the same process to lure Jeremy to the back and put him in Bonnie. And then Gabriel got killed when going into Freddy. Finally, Afton, happy with killing, he decided to do one more. He lured Cassie to the back and killed her. He killed her to the point where she was so bloody she didn't even look human. I'm not trying to dehumanize here. I'm purely basing that off of how Afton is described of just killing her to where it should not have killed. To me, you should not have killed. Like, Afton enjoys killing. It's very obvious. He messed her up so bad here. He shouldn't have killed him. That's what I'm clarifying here. That's what, to me, this feels like. Not dehumanizing thing. William thought to himself, I shouldn't have killed her. The one I shouldn't have killed. Cassidy was stuffed into Golden Freddy and now possesses him along with David. All thanks to the puppet. Charlotte and the puppet tried to save the kids by giving them a present in the form of new life, possessing the suits they were killed in. 5 kids were killed at Freddy's, and this shocked the public, ruining Fazbear's public image. The whole thing would go on to be known as the Missing Children's Incident, and there would be an investigation to this Missing Children's Incident, and the authorities found security camera footage of the spring Bonnie suit being used to lure the kids. With that, William Afton was charged with the crime, but they had to release him from the jail since all they had was circumstantial at best, and they couldn't find the bodies. The business was supposed to continue like normal, but the suits began to stink because of the dead bodies that no one fucking No one forgot to check the fucking suits, by the way. Eventually, this got so bad that the Public Health Commissioner, or someone like that, ordered Freddy's to be closed at the end of 1985. Henry was devastated and planning to reopen it, but first, he threw William out of Fazbear Entertainment. Henry suspected Afton of killing the kids and his daughter, as the FNAF 2 movie reveals, or more like confirms, but Henry didn't have the evidence to prove it like the authorities. The most Henry could do was throw Afton out of Fazbear Entertainment and start building the animatronics to reopen Freddy's Pizzeria with. After being thrown out of Fazbear Entertainment, instead of going back to Afton Robotics or raising his kid, William Afton, the bad father he is, left town for two reasons. The first is he noticed the Funtime animatronics becoming more and more active, and they wanted to kill him. I'm saying this because Afton is clearly gone from town where Freddy's takes place after 1985 and only comes back in 1987 and in 1993. So this means instead of chilling at home and being a good father, Afton skipped town, as the book suggests as well. The second reason is likely to avoid further charges from the MCI, or at least civil charges, not criminal charges. However, Afton did do one more action before skipping town. He ordered his last child, Michael Afton, freeing him from the torments of the gas chambers. Or not, like, he wasn't in there, but gas experiments is more like it. He ordered Michael to go to his underground bunker so that Michael could continue William's work when William is gone, as the FNAF 2 movie says, with Michael's motivations to continue William's legacy. And Michael obeyed, and in 1986 he went underground. This is FNAF's sister location. In 1986, Michael was ordered to go down below ground, below his house, and he went underground. And I say ordered because it seems that William made Michael go down there, as Michael had zero knowledge of Sister Location's bunker prior to him visiting it. Another piece of evidence comes from the FNAF 2 movie, as although Michael is evil, he is acting under William's orders, which kind of tells for the games that at one point Michael did act under William's orders. Anyway, this trip to his father's bunker would change Michael Afton forever. Michael found the elevator that his father built. Michael Afton entered the Funtime Auditorium. What he saw shocked him. He saw blinking human heads on poles. William Afton had been trying to recreate their family that they had lost here. He saw Ballora, which represented his mother. The closed eyes, which were meant to represent how his mother was never aware. And it's very possible that Ballora is actually possessed by Mrs. Afton. He saw the other creations, Funtime Foxy and Funtime Freddy, Afton's creations. As Michael worked his way through the facility night by night, he found out more and more the truth about the man William Afton truly was. Michael discovered the truth about his childhood nightmares. The FNAF 4 nightmares? The same nightmares that his brother suffered before Michael had killed him. Mapped in the power module was a gas chamber around his house, which made Michael realize that William experimented on them both. But why? For Michael, it was clearly for punishment for killing his brother, but this made him realize that William was killing kids and stuffing them into animatronic suits. The rumors were true. Everything is a lie. The animatronics being able to speak like humans to him were proof of that. They thought it was William. His dad wasn't a man broken by death. He was a monster that needed to be stopped. I'm not dehumanizing. I'm trying to quote MatPat in his ultimate FNAF timeline. Still, Michael needed to know more, particularly about the one animatronic he was yet to see, Circus Baby. On the second night, he heard the voice of Circus Baby, and it sounded and spoke like his little sister Elizabeth. However, his sister died a long time ago, but William never told Michael why. But now he realized that Elizabeth was still alive inside Circus Baby. On night 3, Michael was jump-scared by Foxy and kidnapped by Circus Baby, and this was presumably it. He would die stuffed in an animatronic suit like many of the kids before him. Something retired since 1983, according to Phone Guy, by the way. Michael woke up inside Circus Baby, and Circus Baby had him wind up the animatronic spring locks to keep himself alive. He was then released and alive, and this made him certain that he would avenge his brother's death by fixing his sister, and freeing them from the bunker which they were trapped in. Michael knew he needed to do this because of his guilty conscience. Michael returned for one final night, night 5, the last night before Michael was due to be fired, and Michael had to send Circus Baby and his sister to the scooping room as his sister wanted.
I've been out before,
Michael did so as his sister wanted, and we were able to avoid Balloon Boy Pelora, as we're doing so. Balloon Boy doesn't exist yet. But then the animatronics disappeared, and Michael was still being guided by Circus Baby, as she instructed to go to the scooping room, and he didn't ignore her. He ignored her. Happy ending! Just kidding. Michael Afton followed her instructions, went to the scooping room, and he saw the casings of all the other animatronics. Then he saw an animatronic behind the glass, an amalgamation of all the animatronics. His sister was speaking to him, and then she made her intentions clear of why he went there. They were going to scoop him and inject him with the scooper and remnant to use as their body. Michael looked up, and the scooper went into him.
There's nowhere for us to hide here.
Hours later, Michael wakes up possessing his own body, but there were others inside his body. The animatronic he saw underground was called Ennard. Ennard lives inside him, and Michael was forced to cover himself and hide what happened to him, but his flesh was rotting until it was too late. Ennard got out of Michael, spit him out, and Michael was supposed to be dead, but when he awoke, the remnant injected by the scooper kept him alive. Michael Afton had one more goal to do left in his life: find his father and kill him.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
Michael's quest had just begun, but then he saw a job opening for Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Going back in time to 1987 for a second, after Henry had kicked William out of Fazbear Entertainment, he was given the green light to relaunch Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. After receiving the green light, Henry planned to rebuild the old animatronics, but knowing what closed them the first time, Henry decided to make new animatronics based on the toys they sold back in the early 80s. Henry first made Toy Freddy, then Toy Bonnie, then Toy Chica. Henry made a Toy Foxy, but decided to make it a pull-apart attraction and put back together in order to make the restaurant stand out. Henry knew the kids dying at Freddy's couldn't happen again, so he designed the toys with facial recognition software, which is able to tell a child predator or a threat from a mile away, according to Phone Guy. Henry also decided to reintroduce some older animatronics to make the restaurant more appealing to the kids. He added Balloon Boy to the restaurant to sell balloons. Seems pretty self-explanatory. The final animatronic added back to the restaurant was the security puppet, the puppet that was possessed by his own daughter. The puppet was kept in a box in the prize corner in order to give out prizes to the kids, and it was kept in the music box by the security guard, who was able to wind up the music box via security camera. Henry also moved the older animatronics, including Spring Bonnie and Golden Freddy, to the restaurant, but in the parts and service room. The older models could move at night, with the exception of Golden Freddy, who had his endoskeleton to take it out, according to Phone Guy, and Spring Bonnie, who wasn't even possessed. The older models would be occasionally used for parts. The restaurant was ready to open, and it would be known as the Grand Reopen. And it went well, except there was one problem: the night shift. William Afton stood in a bar alone, reading the newspaper he saw. Freddy's prepares for reopening. William was angry. Henry was using his creations without him. Freddy shouldn't exist without him. Then he saw at the bottom a phone number to apply for the night shift. William called the number using a nickname, and he returned to Freddy's, only this time as a security guard. Strangely, enough, nobody realized he was back as William Afton. Hello. Welcome to the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Oh, and look out for the puppet. Matt Pet reference. Some of you will get that. However, on opening night, William Afton found the animatronics really aggressive and hard to manage. Afton reported this issue to Fazbear, and then he requested a transfer to the day shift, because preserving your own life is more important than others, according to Mr. William Afton. William Afton is a horrible human being. Management took note of this and thought that Henry hadn't properly installed a roaming mode at night, and they granted William his transfer to the day shift. So Henry began to look into new hires, and although Michael Afton didn't know of this restaurant yet, someone else did: Jeremy Fitzgerald. And Jeremy was hired and reported for duty at 12 a.m. for his first night in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and this begins 5 Nights at Freddy's 2. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 takes place in 1987 here, and it's the 4th game in the timeline. Jeremy Fitzgerald took charge of the office where he listened to the phone guy tapes about the animatronics. He'd deal with Toy Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Withered Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Golden Freddy, while keeping the music box wound up. He also dealt with the Mangle, which was Toy Foxy, but the children kept ripping him apart, and eventually the staff stopped putting him back altogether. However, before the day ended, William Afton snuck into the building after his shift was over, and he tampered with the animatronics in order to sit in the Save Them minigame, The puppet, knowing that Afton was back, recruited Freddy to help him stop Afton, but they couldn't, and William Afton snuck into the facility, tampering with the animatronics, got back in the Spring Bonnie suit, and lured 5 more kids into the back of the facility. And then he killed them. 5 more kids dead. And now William Afton had a question of where to put the bodies. He decided to shove them in the toy animatronics and Balloon Boy. Naturally, more people noticed more missing kids, and an investigation was started into it. There were only 2 people cleared of charge. Phone guy, since he talks to Jeremy about the investigation, meaning he wouldn't be suspected, and Jeremy Fitzgerald, since if he was suspected, phone guy wouldn't even be talking to him about the investigation. Before hanging up, phone guy warned Jeremy that the next nights would be absolute hell. Upon hearing of an investigation going on at the Freddy's, William Afton did a runner and quit, leaving town to avoid the charges again. This left the day shift available, which Fazbear Entertainment had phone guy informed Jeremy that he would be taking over after his 6th night with the company. He would be moving to the day shift the next day. Meanwhile, with the investigation, no security camera footage, so the investigators tried to get a hold of William Afton, one of the owners of Fredbear's Family Diner. Can't be Henry, since phone guy says the original owner and Henry is still with Fazbear, and Edwin is dead, leaving only William. However, it seems they didn't get an answer from William Afton, so the authorities closed the facility for one day and night. However, no one told Jeremy, so he reported to the facility on night 6, and the phone guy was panicking that Jeremy was alone with the animatronics, and told him to just hang in there. Jeremy finished his last night with Fazbear Entertainment, and the facility reopened for a birthday. Jeremy worked double shift, and on the birthday party, Willard Foxy, who was extremely angry with more deaths and thinking Jeremy was William Afton, went up to Jeremy and bit him, tearing off his frontal lobe, and that accident would be known as the Bite of 87. This shocked everyone, and this closed the second Fazbear Entertainment location, Freddy's, immediately. However, they needed someone to work the night shift still. Henry hired Fritz Smith, who, as it turns out, was Michael Afton, who just learned of the new location from the investigation and knew he needed to find his father, Michael. He needed to find his father, William. Michael Afton did the night, however, he was tampering with the animatronics, looking for clues for his father and trying to free the souls. However, the company noticed him and fired him after one night. However, the Freddy's closed for good right after because of the missing kids again and the bite of 87, obviously. William got his goal of closing Freddy's and he hoped it wouldn't open again. Many years passed, and Michael was still wandering around looking for his father, who was in another town. Afton was missing. Meanwhile, Henry and Emily had finally been given permission to reopen Freddy's back to the public for one last chance by Fazbear Entertainment. In order to ensure things really went as smooth as possible, Henry made a security logbook. In reality, for the security guard, but in reality, the security guard was Ralph, the phone guy, who would start as the security guard until they could find someone else. Now, there was a question of the animatronics, since the toy ones were scrapped for just sucking at their job. Henry would decide to go back to the classics by restoring them with the withered animatronics, crucially with buttons. This will play a key role later. The building was a wreck, and though renovating it would take a long time, Freddy's would only reopen in 1993. William Afton sits in a bar again when he reads the newspaper and sees that Freddy's is opening again, this time with the original animatronics, and William knew the dangers of that. He needed to dispose of those animatronics so that the bodies aren't found, and he could use the possessed metal to make another restaurant for him to experiment on kids without risking any of his children dying, since Mike was a walking corpse. William knew exactly how to get into the restaurant since nobody was inside. Anyway, William applied for a security position, taking another fake name, and he got the job, watching the dump of a restaurant while the cleanup crew and workers were on break for the week. However, William wasn't there to look after the place. Instead, he was there to dispose of the animatronics. Somehow, William got Shadow Bonnie to lure the animatronics one night after another to a back room which was invisible to their programming, and he destroyed them. Started with Freddy, then Bonnie, then Chica, and finally Foxy. On his last night of the job, William came back to Freddy's, having taken the metal from the bodies and looking for any last metal that could be remnant. Basically, it seems like he was looking for Golden Freddy. However, when checking the back room, William found two things: the old spring bodysuit, and when he turned around, the ghosts of the kids were blocking his path. William Afton was shocked and scared and partly excited. The scientific implications were amazing. But what could they do to them? What couldn't they do to him? Were they going to kill him? Was this the end for William Afton? Then Afton turned around again and saw the spring Bonnie suit. That was it. William would scare the ghosts off by getting back in the animatronic that killed them. William ran into Spring Bonnie, but what William had forgotten is that the broken roof and rain seeping in. And to quote the legendary MatPat, if moist breath can shut the spring locks, you bet rain can shut them. And that's what happened. William Afton got locked inside the spring lock suits, screaming in pain while the ghost disappeared in front of him. And William Afton would be gone. Not for good. Still there, but gone. Spring locked inside what would now be known as Springtrap. Afton hoped someone would free him from this pain. Eventually, the repair crew who came and reported the break-in, so Henry would have to come in. Henry found William in Spring Bonnie, and Henry just walked away, and William Afton was forgotten about for now. Not dead, but clinging to life inside what was now known as Springtrap. Afterwards, Henry had a wall to cover the secret room and the dead guy, while Ralph / the phone guy told everyone that through the tapes that the room was never to be touched or mentioned. Henry decided to give someone he trusted the security shift, being Ralph. For so long, Ralph had to fend off for 1 week before Ralph left. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Fox. See, he had to fend off the original animatronics, not the puppet, since the puppet had escaped the FNAF 2 building and Henry couldn't find it. Ralph worked through the week, informing Henry that he would quit after the week. In the nights, Ralph would record tapes in front of him and for the security guard that followed him. But then he looked, and inside his office was Golden Freddy. "It's me," bled into his head, and although Ralph wanted to call his daughter, he couldn't. He left a message to the new security guard to check the back for his body, hoping that he could manage until someone checked. However, Ralph didn't make it. On his last night, the phone guy died. As for the new security guard, Henry interviewed a guy named Mike Schmidt, and although he smelled bad, he did mean well, so he gave him the job. Little did Henry know that Mike Schmidt was Michael Afton, prepared to spend 5 more nights at Freddy's. The next game in the timeline is the original Five Nights at Freddy's, taking place in 1993. Everything was so much simpler back then, before we knew the Aftons, but now I'm getting sidetracked. Michael Afton got hired to work a week at Freddy's, but he took the disguise Mike Schmidt in order to throw up suspicion. Mike saw the original animatronics, the classics, Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy. He couldn't look at them in the same way, now that he knew what his father did. Mike couldn't find his father as the safe room was invisible to the cameras and all employees were ordered quiet, thus explaining why Michael never saw William in FNAF 1. Mike worked a week of Freddy's, occasionally seeing "It's Me" coming from Golden Freddy. Then Mike knew his brother was inside Golden Freddy, but he didn't know how to make him go to heaven and rest. Either way, Mike searched for answers but found none. He walked into a dead end. After 1 week at Freddy's, Michael was fired for odor from being a rotten corpse and tampering with the animatronics, something Mike did during his shifts when nobody was looking. Michael found the bodies, or what was left of them. However, the animatronics stank, and this place would get shut down, and Henry decided to start grieving for good, and another Freddy's wouldn't open for a long, long time. However, Michael did come into possession of the security logbook, which he would write in and the spirits would write back to him. As he tried to help them, he would eventually work on it from time to time. Either way, that ends FNAF 1. Nothing major happened here, but you have to respect what started the whole franchise. With Freddy's closing in 1993, nothing would happen for 30 years. Henry decided to close Freddy's forever, and with that, Fazbear died as well. However, the stories of Freddy's would stay. William Afton's crimes would fade from real to legend to folklore. But for those that were still around, it was very real, such as Mike. In the 30 years after FNAF 1, Michael would finally get another job as he had to pay for a house / someplace to live. It's not impossible that he revisited the FNAF 1 and 2 locations and burned them, since the Phantom animatronics in FNAF 3 are burned as well. So at some point, I'm saying Mike returned to Freddy's. William Afton spent 30 years behind a safe wall. Henry, during this time, spent the time grieving. Most of the animatronics, with the exception of Ennard, the puppet, and Springtrap, were thrown into dumpsters, and their endos thrown out. But the casings had still remained, although they were scattered across the U.S. However, there was only one notable thing that happened in the years 1993 to 2023. Circus Baby had repeatedly tried to control Ennard and the Fun Times, and he grew sick of that, along with Elizabeth being a daddy's girl, and at some point during this period, Ennard threw Baby out of the team, and Circus Baby became Scrap Baby. As for Ennard, he still needed parts, and they have heard that a new Freddy-based park would be opening with actual Freddy's parts, and they would eventually go there, but after FNAF 3. Fazbear's Frights was formed by an organization of evil men looking to make the money off the tragedy of others. They got a hold of a security logbook that Michael Afton had sold to them some time back, and made the office in the game based off the book. They also contacted a bunch of former Freddy's employees and Freddy's fans, trying to get anything they could. They found a bunch of old costumes, masks, and casings, but no animatronics. The only thing that they got close to was old costumes that were worn in the 70s by Edwin Murray and Afton. They, they were building an amusement park based off the stories that happened at Freddy's. The whole facility was built cheaply and thus it had various faults like the audio and cams and oxygen breaking. They needed a security guard for the night shift. And wait a minute. Why is Michael Afton at my door when I mentioned security guard? Mike, fine. Take it. You can have the job. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Mike got the job and began searching for his father, but for weeks there was nothing. But one day, or one night, should I say, Fazbear Frights got a hold of one of the builders for FNAF 1 location back in the early 80s. Like back when it was opened from 1983 to 1985, meaning that they knew about the safe room. They told Frights about it, and when they investigated it, they found one. A real one. Springtrap. William Afton unleashed to enact his revenge after 30 long years. FNAF 3 takes place in 1993. Now, night one, as it has been for weeks, there was nothing. Until a phone call. Michael Afton excitedly looked on the cams after hearing there was a real one. A real friend? No, but a real enemy. William Afton, there he was on night 2. Springtrap had been released and Afton was back. This was Mike's chance to finish off Freddy's legacy. Michael just needed to worry about Springtraps since Michael saw, however, that he could see the puppet and assumed that the puppet was dealing with the spirits. The spirits of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Mangle, Balloon Boy, and his brother, Golden Freddy, were all there. Michael was desperately trying to keep his father at bay. However, he was able to lure them away using child voices, using the cams, while looking out for the phantom animatronics. However, when Michael glanced at a camera occasionally, he would see the puppet, and he usually just ignored it. But he never wanted to kill him, and Springtrap was the only one who wanted to kill him. So Michael assumed the puppet was there, putting the souls of the dead to rest. Meanwhile, the puppet had a long journey to complete. The puppet would find all the souls bar one, and gave them cake and lured them to a party, which to see where the crying child's death was, or not where to see, but like the party was at where the crying child's death was. The puppet changed that day to a happy day, their happiest day ever, and they all finally moved on, with the exception of one spirit. Michael looked up and the building was blue like it sighed, and he knew his brother was finally at peace. It was time. Michael's last night of the week, so it was time. He left the facility, locking the doors. He rigged the facility's faulty wiring to break and catch fire, and the building caught on fire. Michael watched it burn, hoping now they could all move on. Several days later, Michael receives a newspaper. Fazbear's Frights closing after a fire, and now he hoped that his father was in hell. Meanwhile, Springtrap William Afton woke up and walked out from under the rubble. He exited the facility and was unleashed to the world again, more bloodthirsty than ever. Meanwhile, Henry Emily in 2023, still, reads a newspaper. Fazbear's Frights closed, and he knew that William was roaming around. He reformed Fazbear Entertainment, and he decided he would lure them all back to one last to finish them off. After reforming Fazbear Entertainment, he had a Freddy's built on top of the sinkhole where the Afton House and Afton's Bunker and MZM would all stood at one point. Henry then built Lefty, a Freddy-looking puppet with the single goal of capturing the puppet. Lefty did this by distributing some bracelet codes, the same that Charlotte was wearing the day she died. Lefty did his job, captured the puppet, and Charlotte now possessed Lefty. Henry owned the restaurant, but in order to make his plan work, he needed to hire someone, a security guard, to make this whole plan work. Okay, can Michael Afton fuck off from my door again? You can take the job. Why are you so eager about being a security guard? Fine, go take it. Michael heard about the new Freddy's and knew this was a trick. He knew since William was stuck in Springtrap, so it was Henry who was running it. Michael needed to figure out why. Michael was hired by Henry, although not part of Henry's plan, it still worked really well. Michael read paragraph 4, and he was instructed to look for animatronics in the back alleyway at the end of every shift. He had access to various animatronics, like the new Rockstar animatronics that arrived from the owner, as well as the mediocre melodies from an old tech shop. So Michael wondered, why more? Michael looked outside, and there he saw Molten Freddy, formerly known as Ennard, the wires and tubes that had once killed him. Michael brought it in and tested, and there were blueprints for him, detailing that only 3 animatronics resided in Molten Freddy now. His sister was out there. Sure enough, the next night, Circus Baby, now Scrap Baby, turned up, hopelessly devoted to William Afton. The next night, he saw his father, Springtrap, back again, and Michael was determined to finish the job. Michael then saw Lefty on night 4, and Michael realized that Henry was luring them all back and intended to finish them off rather than go to them as Mike had done for years. Then it was time.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
And communication. With all the Aftons dead, Michael and William were dead for good. But William still had to face purgatory. The devil was waiting for him, but one of William's victims wanted to make him suffer, like he had made her suffer. Cassidy, the vengeful spirit, now the only spirit still in Golden Freddy, kept William in purgatory. William's hell. All the animatronics, new and old, with the exception of Edwin, back in the Secret of the Mimic, would rip William limb from them. More pain, more suffering. William wanted death, but no one could help him. In desperation, William screamed for Michael or Henry, but nobody could help him. William would not get help and would repeatedly get punished. Meanwhile, Cassidy, enjoying all this, saw old man consequences, which I'm saying is meant to be the spirit of Edwin Murray. Murray told the vengeful spirit to slow down and to leave the demons to his demons, but Cassidy wouldn't listen. torturing William with versions of himself. William was getting tortured, but he hoped he might escape one day when someone finds Scraptrap's body. That is it for now. Oh my god, we'll cover FNAF AR, Help Wanted 122, Security Breach, Ruin, and FNAF is on the Epstein files. Wait, what the fuck? That was not in my reader for 2026. Huh. Thank you so much for 100 subs. I never thought that this was possible. Part 2 of my FNAF timeline will be released at 150 subscribers, and all of the channels at 130 now. I can't believe that we hit 100. Thank you for all this, and for giving this channel a chance. This has been a journey of a lifetime. But thank you guys so much. Until next time, bye.